LAFCO regular session meeting, November 14th, 2024 at 4:03. That's right. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jordan?
Present.
Commissioner Betancourt?
Here.
Commissioner Casey?
Here.
Commissioner Curro?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Here.
All 5 present.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Betancourt. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the affidavit of posting of the agenda?
So moved. I'll second then. You can whoever you want. You can give it to Mia. Give it to Mia for first.
Motion made by Commissioner Casey, seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez. Thank you very much. Public comment? Oh, sorry. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Public comment.
I'm sorry, Commissioners. There is an item that needs to be added to the agenda. There was a need for immediate action that came to my attention after posting of the agenda. The San Benito County Water District called me on Monday and said that they likely would not be able to get the issue of possibly joining LAFCO on their agenda until December. So they're asking that the deadline be extended until the end of December. So if we could add that item.
To the business items?
Yes, please.
Okay, 5.6. Is that okay with the commission?
So moved.
And Chair, I apologize, that would require a motion to add that item to the agenda, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Betancourt made the motion, and Commissioner Curro second. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner Betancourt?
Yes.
Commissioner Casey?
Yes.
Commissioner Curro?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. We will add that to 5.6. Okay, business items 5.1. Oh, sorry, public comment.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please step up to the podium. In chambers, if you'd like to make a comment, please step up to the podium. On Zoom, you can press *9 or the raise hand icon. No comments.
Thank you. Okay, items, 5.1, approval of the minutes of October 10 regular meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Commissioner Gonzalez, seconded by Commissioner Casey. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner Betancourt?
Yes.
Commissioner Casey?
Yes.
Commissioner Curro?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. 5.2, discussion on proposed edits to the policy and guidelines. Jennifer?
Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Nope, that is not the right screen. Stop sharing. Try that again. Okay, so I don't know how many meetings we've already discussed the Commissioner Handbook and then now these policies and guidelines, but we are definitely working our way through. The addition that you have in front of you is one, I cleaned up the formatting and accepted the changes that we had already gone through. So it should look fairly clean and a lot easier to understand than the edited versions we had been looking at previously. I just want to scroll through first and draw your attention to a couple of items. If they're highlighted in yellow, or if you do see a track change, these are items that we mentioned during our discussion, but perhaps you haven't seen the final change or addition. There was another item regarding the agricultural preservation policies that was going to be a duplicate of what we'll be talking about later. So for conciseness, I deleted it and then added reference to the relevance section. So scrolling through, we don't see any of these areas until page 13. And on page 13, under these policies and criteria for city annexation, there's the prime agricultural lands and the agricultural mitigation measures. Those are all covered extensively under that new section 2.7 that we'll be discussing under another agenda item. So I added a reference to that section and deleted that content. And then if you continue scrolling through, there's two other areas that are highlighted in yellow that were additions we had discussed. Page 18 has the new section 2.5.3 that is adding clarity to what party is responsible for payment if a sphere update or amendment is required as part of an application. And that is just clarifying that the applicant would be responsible for paying any fees or costs associated with doing that update if it's not part of our usual municipal service review and sphere update process. And then one more is from page 19, page 20. And this is clarification about joint planning or cooperation for the cities and county within the spheres of influence of the city or cities. And it clarifies that while the county does possess that sole land use jurisdiction over unincorporated areas, wherever it's located, that the city as the future service provider in those areas within the sphere of influence should have an opportunity to address how land in the sphere is planned for and developed in anticipation of future annexation.
Can I ask a question about that? Or
Yes.
I'm going to wait till the end. So obviously the city has just finished their general plan process and we're about to go have a review to approve the general plan. So how does that apply here if we've already done the all of the work and there's already been opportunity for comment and all of that? How does that apply as far as meeting to reach agreement about boundaries on the sphere?
There's certainly still discussion that can be had with the county prior to submitting that application to LAFCO. In particular, just about the standards within that sphere. And that's what the next section, or next couple sentences refers to,
So
and references the government code.
How the development standards are? Or are we talking about where the actual sphere is and if there's any disagreement over that?
That section is about both the sphere boundaries and development standards. So, yeah, it might be a little late in the game regarding specific sphere boundaries if it's already going to be adopted in the general plan.
Yeah.
But there's still an opportunity as far as the development standards and then the planning and zoning requirements.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So those were the two sections that were added. Those we've already gone through extensively. These sections. This section 2.6, starting on page 21, is new content. And I'll just stop there to make sure that there's no other questions before we move on. Okay. So, as part of this discussion for this agenda item, I'm proposing that we talk just about this section 2.6 that covers 21 and 22. And then we'll stop there, and then the next agenda item will be, I'll do a presentation with a little bit of background about agriculture, preservation, and then cover these proposed policies on the next few pages. And then again, for section 2.8, which is unincorporated islands, we'll stop. I'll provide you a little bit of background, and then we can have a discussion about those policies. So for this particular agenda item, we're only covering now pages 21 and 22, which is all about out-of-agency contracts for services, proposals, and extraterritorial services. Now, this section was mostly to tighten up or clarify the law. So the first section is purely from the government code about the requirements to come to LAFCO to serve areas outside of boundaries. And there are certain exemptions to requiring LAFCO approval. And those are listed here directly from the government code. Hold on. That subsection F, I'll draw your attention to. You see a comment from legal counsel here asking if perhaps there should be a provision for handling these or if we should just use the code. That is for fire protection contracts with other agencies. The government code does go on to describe in great detail, actually, the extra requirements for fire protection contracts. So, I don't know that we need additional provisions here because it's covered in the government code, but I do want to clarify that those other items, A through E, are considered exempt, while F, it's considered exempt, but it's because it has additional requirements. And then,
Jennifer,
yes.
I'm gonna back up on, we were just talking about the general plans of the city or county, doesn't make any difference. When should LAFCO be involved in that? In the beginning, the end, in the middle, or what?
They should be involved throughout to provide comments. And the city has circulated the general plan for comment, as they should, and provided the information, granted while it was several months ago. They did provide the information on their general plan update.
Jennifer, I guess what I'm asking is, I don't recall the general plans ever coming to this body and getting our opinion, they come to staff, right?
Correct. They generally review for documents or applications or any of those kinds of things go through staff for comment. And when it comes to the commission, it's when the sphere update is proposed.
Okay. Thank you.
Or as part of municipal service review, which we'll be conducting on them this year.
Yeah, that's another issue. We haven't really caught up on the MSRs, correct?
No, we're in the process though, and we do have a work plan, and you'll be discussing the wastewater municipal service review at the December meeting. You'll have the full 250 pages or whatever it is in front of you. Right now it's at staff level at the other agencies, and they're providing comments, and then we'll release it for public review.
You're going
For
to
the
be a busy
water one.
lady in the future. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Jennifer, I had a question for you regarding your 2.6.1F. So are you asking us for input, or are we just gonna go ahead and refer to the code section?
Right, that I'm asking for input if the commission desires that there be more detail given here, or particular provisions, or if we'll just rely on the content of the code.
Madam Chair, how often does this government code section get amended that they're referring to, section 56134? Because if it's amended regularly, or if it's something that we are having changes, I would not recommend listing out the items. But if it's something like, it's been 25 years since they've amended it, then maybe some, bullet points about what are these added requirements, just for clarity, so they don't have to go to the code. But if the code is pretty updated regularly, I don't, with the fire issues the way they are, I wouldn't recommend listing anything.
Yeah, I'm just checking to see, it's a relatively recent change, so I don't remember there being substantive edits. And I just pulled it up, and it doesn't look like it's been amended since it was added.
And when was it added?
2017,
Okay.
so 7 years ago.
I don't really have a recommendation. I mean, I hesitate on ever putting anything about a code in a policy like this, because when that code changes, you have to go and update it, and if you're not paying attention to it, it can really mislead the reader.
Agreed.
And what I would say, and the reason I didn't recommend making the change, just kind of flagged it as an issue for discussion, is that government code section is very prescriptive in the procedures, and so it would be adding, a lot of additional text into the policies if we tried to capture it for the reader. We certainly can do, but I just wanted to flag that for the commission.
My recommendation would be not to list anything, just the code section.
I agree.
It sounds like we got a 5-0 on that one.
Okay. For the next part that I have highlighted on the screen, I wanted to provide clarification that the commission is the body that determines if these exemptions apply. So whether a city or special district believes themselves to be exempt, regardless, they must come to LAFCO and submit an application, and the commission must make that determination that they are exempt under one of these exemption outlined above. And that was the process that we went through with the city of Hollister and Sunny Slope back in December. They made the application and we determined that they were exempt.
I support that.
Yeah. I think it provides clarity where agencies have previously been operating under self-declaring exemption and not coming to LAFCO. And while these items A through F are directly from the law themselves, I think it's important to put in the policies word for word because it clarifies that there are only a very small set of exemptions by which LAFCO will allow out-of-agency services to occur. The next sections, 2.6.2 is just initiation of the process, and then 2.6.3 are factors for consideration of the proposed out-of-agency services. Let me know if you want me to go through any of these specifically.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Jennifer, can you go back to the 2.6.1F?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I know for a fact that when the contract with the fire in the county did not go through LAFCO the last time, and I believe that this was already enacted, and we have a changing of the guard. We're going to be having a changing of the guard with several jurisdictions that are actually negotiating a fire contract. So, who has the duty to notify those jurisdictions that they must come to LAFCO?
Well, as part of compiling these policies, I plan prior to our next meeting to distribute the entirety of the proposed policies that you'll be considering for adoption at the December meeting. So ideally, as part of that review, they would know that they have their requirement. But also, if I'm aware, I can reach out to those agencies and let them know.
Okay. Is there a time period? Let's say they sign a contract. Is there a time period they need it to come to LAFCO? It needs to come to LAFCO before it's signed.
Right. It needs to come to LAFCO before it goes into effect. However, if there has already been a contract in effect, right here, section D, if this contract has already been in effect before 2001, it's covered under subsection D. So it just depends on how long that contract, I know you said they're renegotiating, but
Okay, so that
It
does
will
not
be in
fall, that
effect.
does not fall under D, what I'm
No.
talking about.
okay. Okay. Then yes, it would have to, before the contract goes into effect, it would have to come to LAFCO.
And that's if services are extended outside the jurisdictional boundaries. It's my understanding that that's not occurring in this case, so it wouldn't have to come before LAFCO?
Correct. This is for out of area. I don't know the particulars of the new negotiation.
So, Madam Chair,
Go
can I
ahead.
do a little summary for Jennifer?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Jennifer, if the city fire in the city contracts with the county for the unincorporated area, that's considered an out-of-service area service?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
If the city of Hollister provides fire protection for the city of San Juan Bautista, that's an out-of-service area agreement.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would just note that some of the, if it's a fire agreement with those types of facts, it can trigger that 56134 requirement, and you just follow those procedures.
Even though it's not new?
Yes, in some situations, and it's very technical, so you really have to get into the number of affected employees and size of the area that's being changed and a whole bunch of other factors.
I'm not sure anything is being changed. It's, the contract itself is being updated.
Yeah, but it didn't go through LAFCO originally, and we don't know if it met all of section 5.1.
Understood, thank you.
56134.
Okay, valid points.
I got,
I want to clarify, I'm not suggesting it needs to go to LAFCO without better understanding the specifics. I just was flagging some of the factors that you look at.
Yep, no, thank you for that.
I got a question. During the MSR procedures, when they do the fire contract, wouldn't issues come up at that time, whether the contract's coming up shortly or down the road, if it's not being run properly? And then what kind of authority does LAFCO have, if any?
Yes, it would be part of, say, the city municipal service reviews as one of the provided services that would be covered. So it would certainly be flagged at that time. And then LAFCO just has to highlight in the report and communicate with staff regarding the requirements moving forward to come to LAFCO, if that is indeed the case.
Okay, but we do not have a fire district now, correct?
Correct.
No. Not one that San Benito is the principal county for.
Aromas has a tri-county fire district, but that's the only one.
Okay, thank you, carry on.
Okay. So these are other factors that LAFCO will take into consideration when they receive an out-of-area service application. 2.6.4, I believe, is important because, and this has been an issue that has been popping up more recently, it creates a sunset for that approval for 1 year for execution to occur or commence. And this is important because I'm having the city or other interested parties asking me about approvals on lands that have remained dormant or have not made use of that approval in a decade. But without that expiration, that approval still applies. So this is saying, use it or lose it. You get the approval, you must execute or connect or make use of those services within a year after LAFCO's approval. And of course, there's exceptions if LAFCO otherwise specifies in its conditions of approval. And then lastly, 2.6.5, emergency connections. This gives the executive officer the ability to determine if there's a need for immediate action to issue a temporary approval or defer the matter to the commission's next meeting. And this is only in the case of imminent peril to the public health or safety. And that it also acknowledges that the standards of evaluation will not apply to emergency connections in those cases. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, thank you.
Jennifer, going back to 2.6.4,
Mhm.
is this your suggestion for 1 year, or is this set by law or policy?
This is my suggestion.
Okay.
We
So-
can certainly make it any time frame.
Okay, so here's the issue. There have been projects that have been delayed and not on the part of the developer themselves, but obstacles have been placed or requests have been made and they gotta go back and they gotta go back. So the 1 year would lapse. We've had projects that have taken several years to
10
finally
years.
done.
10
Yeah.
years, yeah.
Yeah, 10 years. So, and it costs money to come to LAFCO to get it. So I really, I don't know what the commissioners think, but this is not, 1 year is not long enough.
What would be an acceptable time frame then beyond 1 year? Because we can't have it indefinitely.
Well, you can't have it indefinitely, but we've had one project, well, they could, let's say 5 years, okay? I'm just throwing a number out. So if you say 5 years, and they've had all these obstacles, and they know at 4.5 that they're still having, then they can come, then at that time they can come to LAFCO and say, you know, we need more time. But if you're gonna give them 1 or 2 years, and you know, you know several projects, the top of your head, that, you know, they just took longer, and then they would, 1 year they'd have to come back to LAFCO, 1 year they have to come to LAFCO, but we know some of these projects have taken decades not by the developer, but
Right.
literally by, you know, like, let's say, for instance, we even had a moratorium, and something got approved before the moratorium, and now they'd have to start all over again, and we had no control over that. But I think it's protecting the cities, and it's protecting the county, and it's protecting the property owners to give them more time. So I'm saying 5 years because I've seen it. So it's up to you guys.
Is 5 years sufficient for all of you?
Jennifer, how does that sound?
Yeah, it's up to the commission, but I would also point out that generally under these stricter requirements that are here in this section and then in the law as we know it, that large development projects won't be included or approved for out-of-area service connections. Generally, I mean, the requirement is going to be that large development annex into the appropriate service provider. That there are certain exemptions, and that generally approval will only be given to those smaller connections that are immediately adjacent to the service provider, with the idea that they will annex eminently, generally would be the idea. So we're not talking about widespread or large development well outside of the city boundaries that perhaps is facing struggles trying to complete everything to get development to occur. So I see what you're saying, that maybe more like 3 years might be appropriate, given the smaller scale of what we're talking about. I don't know.
So, Madam Chair, so basically, Jennifer, in the real world, the way it should be if the world was perfect, right? Because you clearly know after being in this position that, yeah. So I'm just thinking, how would this look out of service area providers? What would that look like when you say small? What's small to you?
So can I ask a question on top of that, please?
Please.
Like Best Road,
Right.
imminent peril, water system.
Right where I'm at.
Okay. They're looking at annexing in with Sunny Slope water to be provided a more potable source of supply. And it might or might not be able to be argued whether it is imminent peril to public health and safety. That's a small situation, it's 50 service connections, but they need to be connected sooner than later. One, because funds are running out, and two, because although the water is currently potable now, it could be better.
So that would be an example, Jennifer, that's a small amount that would get annexed in, but is that considered so small that it wouldn't have to be annexed in to Sunny Slope? It would be an out-of-service area, but the problem with an out-of-service area, are they a CSA? Or they are a municipal
water company.
municipal water.
Yeah, no,
Municipal
because
water
that's
system.
just,
Go ahead.
that
go
would
ahead.
be for annexation though, not for an out-of-area service agreement. And based on, the factors here, they're immediately adjacent to a provider that's willing to provide to them and willing to annex them. So they wouldn't meet the needs of an out-of-area service agreement.
Right, but if let's say, they didn't want to be annexed in, and that's not the case here, but let's say that was the case. For example, maybe Stonegate would not want to be annexed in after Best Road, even though it butts up against Best Road almost, kind of, sort of, we'll say it does. And so if they say, no, we don't want to annex in, we want to have an out-of-service area agreement, is that considered small? What are there, how many in Stonegate? I think there's like 70-something.
Okay.
I'll say 70-something. What is the definition of small? I mean, that's where I'm kind of going with the question.
Right. Well, and that would all be part of the factors, right? Now, factor A is whether annexation is a reasonable and preferable alternative to LAFCO allowing extended services outside the agency's jurisdictional boundaries.
Gotcha.
The other one is whether it's growth inducing. In the case of Best Roads, it's not growth inducing, right? Because it's already been developed.
Correct.
Whether the proposed extension services.
I'm gonna interrupt there, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. So you say it's not growth inducing, but they're 5-acre parcels that they could subdivide, and then because now they have this service, they could subdivide and turn them into 1-acre parcels, and it would be growth inducing. It's not growth inducing right now because they don't have adequate water, but the argument that can be made is once they get adequate water, are we now inviting them to potentially, I know Elliot sees where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I understand, and that's kind of, like, sorry to use Best Road.
I know, I'm sorry to use Best Road people.
But,
Wouldn't,
yeah.
wouldn't they have to annex to go from 5-acre zoning to 1 acre?
Yeah, they would annex, but by annexing them in, you're saying it's not growth inducing, but it could be growth inducing. I'm just trying to
If
put,
it were a different system, Best Road.
yeah, I don't think we want to go there yet. It's just hypotheticals. I'm putting the hypotheticals
all
of what other people
hypothetical.
will say and what my constituents say. And I know I put on my board hat, sorry, I will remove it. But the concern is always if you're adding services in an area, you're promoting growth. And I just want to make sure that what we're adopting in policy kind of settles the nerves of the public, that just because we're fixing all of these water issues does not mean we're inviting growth. And how do we ensure that we're not inviting growth and maintaining the rural areas that are already in existence?
Right. So, in the scenario you're talking about, though, that would require annexation. And this is about just the out-of-agency services. So the act of just providing the water where there's already water in place is not by itself growth inducing. I see what you're saying though about opening it up. But that's why there's other factors as well that are listed here. Consideration.
So just to clarify, this, if we leave it at 1 year, they would have to renew their application every year. Is there a fee for that application? I know there is, but I kind of wanted to know what the fee is. I didn't memorize it.
Yes, there's a fee, but they would only have to renew it if they hadn't connected or made use of the services.
Well, I'm gonna have to agree that I think we need to extend it. I'm not totally supportive of 5 years, but 3 years, being able to give them a little leeway, and then understanding that we notify them if they're 3 years, or that they understand when they come to us. In 3 years, set your calendar, because if you're not at this point, you gotta come back to us. So just do a calendar reminder.
3 years seems more reasonable.
Yeah. But
I agree.
very good point from our
Yeah, thank you.
alternate commissioner.
Yeah, I agree with 3. Do we have consensus?
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for that discussion.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of that.
Anything else for the end, this section of out of area service agreements? To page 22.
I'm good.
I'm good.
So am I.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please come to the podium. On Zoom, you can press *9 or the raise hand icon. No comments.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the changes, that we discussed?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion made by Commissioner Gonzalez, seconded by Commissioner Curro. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Benton,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Curro,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Proposed agricultural policies. 5.3.
Yay. Hold on just a moment. Okay. You should have in front of you the presentation on preservation of agriculture policies. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on what this looks like in San Benito, but also the legal requirements before we get into a detailed discussion on the policies. Let's see here. So, in the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, there is section 56064 that defines what prime agricultural land is. Okay, and it's an area of land, whether a single parcel or contiguous parcels, that has not been developed for use other than an agricultural use, and that meets any of the following qualifications. Now, I am not an agriculture expert, so I cannot tell you what many of these things mean. However, there are experts, and they do extensive mapping, so I do have maps as part of this presentation to show you what lands within San Benito do meet all of these, or any of these qualifications. Okay. We do know one of the aims of LAFCO is to preserve prime agricultural lands. But it's also important that the Act also empowers LAFCOs to balance development needs with the state interests in preserving open space, agricultural land, and promoting cost-efficient public services. So, like you can see in section 56001, it says the legislature recognizes that the logical formation and determination of local agency boundaries is an important factor in promoting orderly development and in balancing that development with the sometimes competing state interests of discouraging urban sprawl, preserving open space and prime agricultural lands, and efficiently extending government services. Also, in the code is among the purposes of the commission are discouraging urban sprawl, preserving open space and prime agricultural lands, encouraging the efficient provision of government services, and encouraging the orderly formation and development of local agencies based upon local conditions and circumstances. So this is the part that gives us the ability to adopt policies that are specific to the local conditions and circumstances to meet those competing interests or balancing those often conflicting interests. So the Act also describes the intent of the legislation with regard to agricultural resources. It says, in reviewing and approving or disapproving proposals, which could reasonably be expected to induce, facilitate, or lead to the conversion of existing open space lands to uses other than open space uses, the Commission shall consider all of the following policies and priorities. So these are the factors that are included under those that will be analyzed as part of application processes. So letter A, development or use of land for other than open space uses shall be guided away from existing prime agricultural lands and open space use toward containing non-prime agricultural lands unless that action would not promote the planned, orderly, efficient, and development of an area. And the other one is development of existing vacant or non-prime agricultural lands for urban uses within the existing jurisdiction of a local agency or within the sphere of influence of a local agency should be encouraged before any proposal is approved, which would allow for or lead to the development of existing open space lands for non-open space uses, which are outside of the existing jurisdiction of the local agency or outside of the existing sphere of influence of the local agency. Anyways, I just wanted to point these out before we get into the discussion so that you know what the state mandate is. It often can be hard because, as I mentioned, there are aims of LAFCO that can be competing, and one of which is preservation of open space and agricultural lands, competing with this idea of logical and efficient services. So just to demonstrate what does meet that definition of prime farmland within San Benito County, here's a countywide map. You can see the green is the prime farmland.
Can we zoom into that, Madam Chair? Jennifer, can we zoom into that closer to see the northern part of the county?
Well, I do on my next maps
Sorry.
have,
Because I don't see this in our attachments. Oh, it's this one. Oh, yes. Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry, my
But-
apology.
on this next one, I do have a zoom in so that you can see what it looks like around the city of Hollister. The green is the prime farmland, the blue is the city's sphere of influence, and the red is the city limit.
Just to say, it looks quite squeezed, the city. I mean, so when you're looking at this, it just, that's a funny looking city boundary, which I've always thought. But at the same time, our prime ag land is right there around it. So, it does make quite a dilemma with potential future growth.
Right, and exactly, and that's what I'm referencing is the need for balancing. Obviously, there's the aim of preserving the ag, but also the need for logical boundaries and efficient growth, right? Right now, as boundaries look, as you mentioned, they're funny, to say the least. And in the next presentation, I'll be pointing out all of the islands. A lot of these little nooks and crannies along the edges of the city do meet the definition of an island because they're substantially surrounded by the city. So you already have prime farmland that's within islands. So two opposing factors there, the need to include islands within the city limits, but then it's prime farmland. And then this is San Batista, which is also squeezed on one side by the prime farmland. Once again, the blue is its current sphere of influence, and the red is the city limit. The boundaries look a little bit better, though, as far as islands go. But interestingly, it does have quite a bit of prime farmland within the city limits.
So, Madam Chair, if I can ask Jennifer, what does that mean when you have prime farmland within your city limits? It's already annexed into the city. It's up to the property owner if they wish to change the zoning of it, but or are they even? I mean, this is where the balancing of property rights versus the needs of the community for like economic vitality or businesses or housing. So I'm just curious because I'm not used to seeing that much prime ag land in such a little city.
Right, so in this case, it would be up to one, the landowner, and two, the city. It depends on the city's policies, land use policies regarding that prime ag. And if they have adopted or developed any means to prevent its conversion or to protect it. Some cities have.
So Jennifer, I have a question for you, because I get the definitions for prime ag. But, so it isn't necessarily agriculturally zoned to be prime ag then? Because, for instance, in the city limits, we just went through this with our general plan, we have 0 agricultural land that's zoned agricultural. And yet we do have things being farmed, so those are considered prime agriculture even though it's zoned as something else?
Correct.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, just to clarify, the prime ag land designation actually comes from the state, correct? It's not something in zoning, it's not something that we maintain. They tell us where our prime ag land is. Am I accurately stating that?
Yes, that's where the definition comes from in the Cortese-Oxford Act.
So regardless of what the zoning is in a city or a county, it's the state that's designating, so it's almost like a layer of its own.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair? So Jennifer, let's go back to the Hollister map.
Mm-hmm.
And on McCloskey or Wright Road, it's called Wright Road, between Wright Road and Buena Vista, on the northwest side, we're going to have a high school. It's like Robert Bernowski says, get a colonoscopy at the high school.
Oh, he did.
Sorry, Jennifer. So we're going to have a high school on prime ag land, and we don't have a say, so is LAFCO. It's all designated by the state. What does that do to the neighboring land next to it when the property owners come to LAFCO or to the city or to the county and say, hey, if the high school can be there, why can't I also build something on this property? So, do you have an answer for that, or is that something you want to discuss next month? I thought you were gonna come back and you were gonna tell us about what the high school and how they can and cannot, we have no power over it.
Right, well, that is the key to it all, is that LAFCO really doesn't have a power over a school district and the land use designations, but
The high school is going to extend development out into prime ag land. And we're supposed to protect ag land, but as, you know, Commissioner Currow said, there's also the rights of the property owners, and they can come and they can request their land to be zoned, because obviously they can make more money by developing it. So where does LAFCO begin? Where does property rights begin when it comes to this new development on there? Or is it too soon to talk about that?
well, the school district is, would like to come and present to LAFCO. They were in the middle of, it's just post the election, so deciding what their strategy is going to be from here on out. So it's looking more like they may come in December to present, but without listening to them otherwise, as far as LAFCO is concerned, and the new school, it is outside of our purview regarding the preservation of prime ag, in that it's a state entity, essentially. However, they will come to LAFCO in order to be annexed to the city or to receive services from the city. So in that way, LAFCO will be taking part in that process.
So
That
Jennifer,
said, they are still considered, I don't know what's a good word. Josh, do you want to speak on this item?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of the short answer is that, the school district itself isn't subject to LAFCO. And so, the policies and oversight that LAFCO has related to this issue doesn't directly apply to the school district. Our only, regulatory sort of authority at the end of the day would be, any proposals by service providers who are subject to LAFCO related to that issue. And I know that can be frustrating, and in some ways it's inconsistent, frankly, with our mission in other cases, but it's just a fact of the way school districts are treated. They're just really seen as an arm of the state.
so Jennifer, sorry, Madam Chair, yeah, it's okay. I don't want to talk over anybody, but so if they do develop there and they come to us and do this presentation in December, can we ask that they because there are regulations and rules around what can happen around a school, and how does a development of a school in prime ag land affect neighboring ag land, and are neighboring parcels losing property rights and the ability to farm up against a school? And so is there, in their presentation, what are they doing to make sure that the buffer, I think they call it a buffer area around a school, how is that buffer impacting the neighboring property owners? Because I think that's really an area that the residents and the public are trying to understand, and if that's presented to us, it might help us be a little more informed moving forward. Not that we have power, just that because there's a LAFCO process quasi, whether it's the out of service area agreement or the annexation, and then maybe layering that with the new general plan sphere of influence from the city and where that's going, just to kind of have a central conversation that's not with the city and not with the county and not necessarily with the school district, but with LAFCO over all of this impact in that area. Did that make sense?
Right, I can certainly ask them to speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
On the LAFCO. Mhm.
I was trying to remember because I've seen the presentation a couple of times, and I know they talked about a buffer zone that they had added around, particularly for the reason of farming and pesticide spraying on the farm.
But is it their property is the buffer
believe
zone,
so.
or
I-
it's
don't quote me,
outside of
but I
their
believe
property?
That's what I
think
added
would be nice.
land when they bought to make sure. Don't quote
Because I
me.
think if
I'm
we
sure
could
can
get that
find out
fact
from them.
base at this level and be able to share that with the public, it will not demystify, it'll kind of clarify what's happening, because there's a lot of rumors out there right now. And I think getting clear facts about what the school requirements are from the actual school district would be fantastic.
And the other thing I would add too is the school district is subject to CEQA, and so they'll need to, in whatever environmental documents required for their proposal, look at all of those types of issues.
Thank you, Josh.
I got talking about prime ag land. I've personally worked on that for quite a few years. San Juan Oaks was really involved in, I can't recall what they called it, but I know I sat in that back room before planning commission meetings for hours for months. And they came up with credits, and if you were building on prime ag land, I believe you got 5-1, so you got 5 credits. And I mean, you're testing my memory, but San Juan Oaks, I believe they needed the developer there bought some acreage in San Juan and took the credits off of it. She's shaking her head, so you recall that, right? And anyway, he paid X amount of dollars for it and then turned around and put it up for sale. Took all the credits off of it, except for, I don't know, three or 4 on each one of the 3 different partials he left on it so they could build a house or whatever. But what became of that after San Juan Oaks? Nothing. Correct? So now in the general plan updates, they're talking about 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 5-to-1, and back then it was each credit was something like, I don't know, $60,000 or $70,000 supposedly. But the city of Hollister did not want to go along with it, so it just died. But that's my recollection of personally working, trying to protect prime ag land. And I'm all for it, and I can't personally, sitting on this body, give the high school, I can't, the only way that, to me, that they can not come to this body is if they drilled their own well and put their own septic systems in. But they have to come to us to get the other services, I believe. And anyway, that's where I'm at.
I know there's an ag element meeting tonight for the county, so I think they're gonna be addressing that, but, I hear you.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you have anything else on this?
Let me just finish going through the slides here. I think that was, didn't we hear, this was what I wanted to get to. This is the prime farmland conversion rate over the last almost 4 decades. So the net change during that time has been over 12,000 acres decrease in prime farmland. And that's annually almost 679 acres. There are other types of farmland. And it shows that, let's see here. Sorry, I can't quite see. Actually, farmland of local importance has seen the greatest decline over that time. And that prime farmland and its conversion has kind of leveled out over the last decade or so, at just over, that's close to like 27,000 acres. So that's a good sign. And then that farmland of statewide importance has even seen an increase. So that's also a good sign here. And that is all I have for this little presentation.
Can I make a quick comment on the farmland and the inventory and the changes? Because I know we look at that and we go, oh, we're losing all this farmland, but very little of that is actually has to do with housing development. There's a lot of other factors that are here, so I just want to make sure we know that's not because there's a bunch of houses being built, it's because of a bunch of factors, so.
Jennifer, I have a question through the chair. When you say that, or do you know how the government say that we've been taking away prime farmland? When the county went into 5-acre zoning, did that decrease prime ag land? Because is there a 20-acre minimum, or how does that work?
I don't know about that. I would have to look into it. I don't know if anybody else is aware, but yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, so I'd have to do some research.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the commission? Do we have any public comment?
Would like to make a comment in chambers, please come to the podium. On Zoom, you can press *9 or the raise your hand icon. Lynn Overtree.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lynn Overtree. I'm the Executive Director of the San Benito Agricultural Land Trust, and I am heading over to the Ag Element, but Carminder Brown, who's with the San Benito Resource Conservation District, said, I'll cover for you till you get here. This came onto my radar very last minute, but I'm really glad to have listened to that presentation. It gives me some awareness. Fundamentally, we want to just support as much preservation of agricultural land as possible, balancing that with our need to grow and have commercial revenue, etc. And associated with that, I wanted to say that that the definitions of prime ag land is part of what's been challenging. We discovered this with the county back a couple years ago, that we were exclusively using the state farmland mapping and monitoring program maps, which is just kind of what we saw here. We saw a blend of definitions in this presentation, but the problem with that source is that it is only, its purpose is to track what farmland is going out of production. And so if it's been out of production for more than 4 years, then they just reclassify it as grazing land. Even it may not have the livestock on it, probably doesn't. It's just not being irrigated and produced. And so that way the state can say, oh my, we've got a loss. Why are we having this loss, and deal with that separately. What we want to know when we're planning and approving projects is that land does it have the capacity to be valuable farmland? and productive farmland. And so looking at the USDA maps, if that's prime quality soil, doesn't matter if it's stopped being irrigated or it has a house on top of it, it is still prime quality. The soil quality has not changed under there. So now your general plan has new definitions that allows more sources of information to assess the quality of that soil, and then helps your city council decide what kind of mitigation they may want from the developer. And we're starting that process tonight with the agricultural element, and I know that San Juan Bautista has a very serious desire to protect their farmland, which they're seeing here as prime ag. So that's fundamentally what I wanted to share with you guys. I have 18 seconds. I would love to talk more about definitions and things. I appreciated everything you said. Yeah, Silver Ranch, we have an easement on San Juan Oaks.
Thank you very much.
I have no other comments.
Thank you. Did we change anything? Motion to approve as,
I don't think there's a motion on this one, is there? Staff direction?
I still need to show the policies.
Policy.
Oh, right.
Yep,
Sure.
I saw the one note in there. Or two.
Jennifer, if I may ask for the presentation to be emailed to us, we didn't get that in the packet, but that way we can see the lines in the growth lines, because it's just in black and white, yeah. So if we can get that electronically sent to all the commissioners, I'd appreciate it.
Jennifer, this is Vanessa. I can send it up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. So you do have in front of you a continuation of the proposed policies. This will be page 23 through 27. So the next 4 pages. And these policies are generally, I started with a base from LAFCO, and because their agricultural policies have won an award at the LAFCO level, and also they have a similar kind of emphasis on the importance of agriculture in their county. So it seemed like a good place to start. I do know that they're fairly detailed, so you may have some questions, but to start, the opening is fairly straightforward. It's the legislative mandate that we already covered in the presentation, and the applicability also referenced in the presentation. And then a policy statement. This was my attempt to make it specific to San Benito County. If the commission has anything else they'd like to add to this policy statement, please let me know. But in essence, it's just a statement that any boundary changes for urban development should only be proposed, evaluated, and approved in a manner which, to the fullest extent feasible, is consistent with the continuing growth and vitality of agriculture within the county. Section 2.7.4 outlines the criteria by which a proposal, additional criteria, right? We have already outlined general criteria for applications, and we've outlined criteria specific to particular types of applications, like city annexations. These would be in addition to that, review criteria regarding the impact on agriculture. The last one, this was, you're seeing a note back and forth between legal counsel and myself. But the very last factor was one, perhaps the balancing of preservation of agricultural lands with environmental and social justice considerations. We may want to be more specific about that, or as legal counsel wrote, perhaps just keep it as considerations, and that allows us flexibility in how we evaluate that particular criteria.
Jennifer, can I ask a question real quick here?
Mhm.
So how is the ag element for the county and any ag policies from the city being reviewed with this agriculture, conservation policy that you've drafted? I mean, how do we make sure that we're collaborating, especially when the county's in the middle of an ag element review?
Right, good question. And I have to say, I've only vaguely reviewed what's been proposed out there. So this has been produced kind of independently. But I do have the intention that after reviewing with the commission of distributing in particular this section, the out-of-area service connection section, and the islands section to both cities and the county for comment before our next meeting.
That's great. That's
To
exactly
ensure
what I wanted
that-
to hear. Thank you.
I think asking them to look through the entire policy section might be a little bit much, but I think those three sections would warrant an input from the three land use agencies.
I concur in Madam Chair, on I think if we get too specific in there, it can hurt us. I think that, leaving it the way it is right now and getting the feedback back from the other jurisdictions, and if they start to raise concerns, then we can address it, but right now I think keeping it vague allows for more flexibility of the
Yeah, I do too. I agree with
Commission.
that statement.
Okay. Excuse me. Agency guidelines is just encouraging adoption of policies that are aligned with this aim and goal of preserving prime egg, along with ensuring those logical growth patterns. It also encourages the city and county to formalize agreements maintaining agricultural buffers, and encourages local agencies to identify the loss of prime egg land as early in their process as possible, to work with applicants to initiate and execute plans to mitigate for that loss in a manner that's consistent with the policy.
And so, just to clarify, so with Commissioner Casey's comments about, actually, it was the speaker, the public speaker's, Lynn's comments, along with Commissioner Casey, is there can be a policy in a jurisdiction that is more restrictive. It's just we're making sure that our policy and their maybe more restrictive policy are in a line. Am I getting that correct? Because what I don't want to see in this is that we have policies being adopted by jurisdictions that LAFCO is now saying now you need to be more enforced. They can be more restrictive in my opinion, but they need to be at minimum what LAFCO's policy is. Is everybody kind of in agreement that that's kind of how we need to be approaching this? Because I think if we make our restrictions more restrictive, we're taking away the powers of the jurisdictions in their policies. So, did that make sense, kind of?
Sort of, but I don't know what's
I,
So
I think we just need to make sure that we defer to whatever the guidelines are, the policies in the code, so that way we aren't infringing.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think that's what you're trying to say.
That's kind of what I'm trying to say, and making sure that if cities are being more restrictive, they have every right to be more restrictive on preserving egg land. We just have a set requirement at LAFCO of what we have to do. Okay.
I don't know that we're more restricted, at least based on the fact that we didn't have any ag zoning in our entire city. We didn't, but now that the sphere is being, we're at a 1-to-1. That's what our ag preservation is. It's not that restrictive, so. At least that's what's proposed, I should say. Hasn't been adopted.
And I don't find that these terms are particularly restrictive. I know that they look detailed, but often they're identified as considerations and factors for consideration. Really, it's up to the commission and how it wants to read that consideration, right? So if we're moving on to the standards for annexation, involving prime agricultural lands. The very first one is there is insufficient marketable, viable, less prime land available in the subject jurisdiction for the proposed land use. I mean, that's very up to interpretation and dependent on the commission's read of the information that's provided. So while this looks detailed and restrictive, I think that there's a lot left open to interpretation. Okay, so section 2.7.6. These are other standards. I do like Part B, which talks about effective measures to mitigate the loss of agricultural lands, in particular detail. And then the emphasis in C that less prime agricultural land generally should be annexed and developed before prime land is considered for boundary changes.
Jennifer, just a quick
Yes.
question, under that C section, where it talks about soil classification and, you know, I guess those are probably state or mandated through the state, but one of the issues, especially like along that Buena Vista corridor, there's areas that don't have sufficient water or have bad wells. And so you can have the best soil in the world, but if you don't have the ability to water it appropriately, I mean, it's strange that it doesn't take into account water at all as a part of how they identify.
I agree with you. That's a good point.
Yeah, I only know that because we had a couple of farmers come in and talk about they're sharing wells now because they couldn't get decent water out of their own property, and yeah, so.
Okay. Let me look into that, and perhaps there's something else out there that can be added as a consideration regarding access to water. Let's see here. So section 2.7.7, change of organization or reorganization resulting in the conversion of prime agricultural land. And then in this subsection is when LAFCO will approve a change of organization that will result in that change or conversion of prime ag land. Once again, this is about the balancing of those different interests, ensuring that there's logical boundaries and efficient services provided. And that's the aim of this section, that if conversion is going to occur, that each one of these items should be met or factors considered. Near the end. Oh, we got 2 more pages. The next couple of sections, 2.7.8 and 2.7.9, are agricultural mitigation. This is specifically what would be required by LAFCO, which the ratio that was mentioned before, a 1-to-1 replacement ratio. Whether that's in the form of dedication of farmland, the payment of fees, or any other measures of reasonably equivalent quality and character. Let's see here. And then finally, the last section in that is that the loss of fewer than 20 acres of prime egg land would be mitigated by the payment of in lieu fees as mitigation rather than dedication of agricultural conservation easements. And if it's more than 20 acres, that it would be any one of those options. And then in all cases, the Commission reserves the right to review such mitigation on a case-by-case basis. So once again, giving the Commission flexibility. The next section is regarding agricultural mitigation imposed by other agencies through the sequel process, etc. 2.7.10 is mitigation for public agency projects. And the last one, if there's a less than significant agricultural loss. For those annexations of less than 5 acres. And in those cases, mitigation will not be required. Are there any questions about those sections?
Jennifer, I think it's a really great start to be able to send out to the other jurisdictions to get feedback.
I really think that feedback will be helpful in this process. I know that it's a little overwhelming to look at all of this right now, particularly if you don't have a lot of CEQA background or knowledge in agricultural preservation and these things that we're talking about, the mitigation requirements. So I think having those 3 other agencies take a look and provide input and comment will be valuable, super valuable.
Is it possible to also include the land trust and the resource conservation district in the distribution of these policies so that they can provide feedback?
Definitely.
More inclusive.
Yes, I will do that.
And possibly even the Farm Bureau. And the Egg Commissioner. I'm sorry, I'm just keep going. I'll stop. Turning the mic off.
I'm open to distributing it to any agency that might have valuable insight, comments.
Great. Any other comments? Perfect. Public comment? Perfect. Moving right along. Really. Proposed island policy.
Okay.
Sorry, Jennifer, how are you doing?
Doing okay. We'll make it through here. Okay. This presentation is in your packet. Another just quick overview I wanted to provide before we get into talking about the specific policies. An island is generally defined as an unincorporated pocket that's either entirely or substantially surrounded by the jurisdictional boundaries of another agency. In this case, generally we're talking about cities and those unincorporated islands. There's a more restrictive definition of an island, and that's to meet the requirements for no protest proceedings. That would be if the areas are being proposed for annexation, then we wouldn't have to go through the process of conducting protest proceedings after the annexation and the noticing requirements, and that's if it meets those 4 requirements below. If the land area does not exceed 150 acres, the land is, as I already mentioned, surrounded or substantially surrounded by the city, it's substantially developed or developing. Notice this use of substantially. It's definitely up to interpretation. And then finally is not prime egg land. However, those other islands do meet the definition of an island. They just don't meet the definition to have a streamlined annexation process. These are the islands that are in and around City of Hollister. There are 10 islands that are fully surrounded by the city. So like number 18, fully surrounded. Then there are 19 that are what I am terming substantially surrounded by the city. And those are ones along the edges.
23 is my favorite from the election world.
Which one?
23.
Mm-hmm.
That one is just so, I mean, I don't think the public understands what that does when you're talking about voting. You have a different ballot type for every one of those islands. I think it is Valley View.
Yeah, and it's not just one, it's 5. Yeah.
5.
So I thought it was fairly interesting as I started looking. I hadn't even been considering these ones that are along the perimeter, but there's so many of them. And, you know, in the policies, we'll be discussing what substantially means. I believe I included in there greater than 50%. Some LAFCOs have greater than 75%. It's up to the will of the commission. At that point, then we need to start measuring some of these perimeters to determine if they are islands or not. But for the most part, by eyeballing, these are the ones that would meet the criteria generally.
Excuse me, Jennifer,
Yes.
we have gotten rid of the easy ones in the past, and the tough ones are still left. Does the city have to, bring them up, or the individual islands?
Yeah, that's a great question. Who initiates the application process?
That would be either the landowners or by petition of the residents or the city.
And if you have let's say, for example, I just know, because I know the constituents in number 24, the majority of those constituents want nothing to do with being in the city, no offense to the city. It's just not the will of that group. They could do a petition to stop from being annexed in, and that would hold. Is that correct?
No, not a petition to prevent it from occurring. In order to prevent it, they would have to go through the protest.
Oh, the protest process.
proceedings.
Okay.
Yeah, after the fact.
Okay.
What I'm getting at is we can't force them to, annex, correct?
Correct. LAFCO cannot initiate annexation. It can't start that process. So it would definitely be up to, like I said, either the landowners, by petition of residents, or the city itself initiating that process. However, in our policies, we can certainly push the city to annex islands prior to, say, greenfield development annexations. Or push the city to develop an annexation plan for the various islands. I think that the areas in number 23 may meet all of the conditions for the streamlined annexation process, so without the protest proceedings. So that area could easily be annexed into the city. But most of the others I'm unsure of. I don't think many meet the size requirements.
I believe that the city has to give some kind of carrot to get those folks to want to annex. I mean, I've talked to some of them. There's, I don't know which one it is, but there's 17 houses on a street, and you know, they don't want to annex because it's, I forget, $13,000 for sewer hookups, and they're upset at the county because they got potholes, and the county doesn't care about them, you know.
Oh, come on. We care. Come
Well,
on.
you got 458
I know,
miles
I know.
of roads you gotta fix. So why are you gonna do one block? You know, my suggestion was them to go to the board and form an HOA, and they take care of their own roads. They're not interested in that. Anyway, I don't know the answer, to be honest with you. But I believe the city has to give some kind of incentive for those folks to annex.
Well, particularly if you consider that there may be road issues that the city would then be responsible for fixing that hadn't been fixed in years. So it's, yeah, they're taking on a big expense as it is, so I don't know, giving them money to get them to do something would be, yeah. Jennifer, I know we've talked about this before, and since we're talking about islands, I'm bringing it up again because there is a rather peculiar thing happening with the county's housing element and wanting to utilize the islands within the city for development and putting like high density zoning on. It's not really covered in here, but what is LAFCO's, should there be a stance on that? I mean, it just seems like totally the opposite of what should be happening, according to what we're trying to do with LAFCO. So any thoughts on that?
Well, it's partially covered under that one section that I added that was yellow highlighted about the areas within the city's sphere. Right, that yes, technically the county has land use authority in unincorporated areas, but while they do, it's recognized that the city, because it's areas within their sphere, will eventually be taking those areas on. So there should be cooperation in developing joint zoning and development standards in those areas. That's why I included here on this image the differing land use designations for each of the areas right now as it exists. Just to point out some of the extreme difference. There's the requirements in the law that the city and the county should come to an agreement for areas within the sphere. And there's also, when we're looking at the island discussion, also recommendations or encouragement for the city and county to work together for those areas as well. But as far as LAFCO's perspective on it, that's about as far as we can go.
So, Madam Chair, in light of time, because I know we have a little conflict coming up that's already here, would it, Jennifer, because you have recommendations here, that some options, you have the formal agreement or MOU, the joint planning committee. Could we say with this draft policy that those options be relayed to the jurisdictions for feedback of what they may consider, so that we're not putting in an option, we're giving them the options and we have them come back to us, so we're letting them feel a little more inclusive? What do you guys think?
I agree.
Is that okay? And then Jennifer, in your distribution of this, you'll be able to explain, that the commission wants to hear back from you, and you can maybe explain what these options look like.
Okay. And we're talking about, in this case, the county, obviously planning it, and the city.
Yep.
Yep. Makes sense.
Is that island, I think 18, is that the Dr. Siwak's property? And is that the one that there's a issue with city and county sharing tax?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Which, in light of time,
Sorry, Jennifer, four of us are attending a National Philanthropy Day dinner at 5:30.
Oh, 5:30, okay.
we didn't plan this very well.
So then can I make a motion that we table the rest so that way you guys can get to your meeting?
Except for 5.6, we need to take
Oh,
action
yes,
on
because that was
today.
the emergency, the urgent item,
Right.
yes.
I'm not invited, so keep going.
I'm getting recognized.
Let me stop sharing.
So do we want to open 5.4 to public so we can?
Yeah. Sorry. Do we have public comment on 5.4?
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, you can come to the podium. No public comment.
Thank you. And knowing that we're not finished with it. So if we can table the rest of 5.4,
Is it table or continue?
continue, sorry. And
I'm sorry, was there a motion?
I was trying to do that,
sorry.
but it's okay. So we'll go
We're
ahead and
working on
continue
it.
5.4. Do we need that to a date and time certain? No?
To the next meeting.
Okay, to the next meeting. And then to actually table 5.5.
Thank you.
And then we continue on to 5.6, the, Sunny Slope.
I'll second.
Thank you. Sorry, did you have something, Jennifer, that you were gonna add to that?
Sorry, no.
Okay, sorry.
Talking.
So the motion was made to continue 5.4, table 5.5 by Commissioner Gonzalez, seconded by Commissioner Curro.
With the understanding that we can still have her send it out to the jurisdictions with that option.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, but we'll continue all of that, yeah.
Can we have a special meeting?
Let's see if we need it. We'll let the chair decide.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Betancourt,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Curl,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. And if we can go to 5.6.
Just very quickly, like I mentioned, I received a phone call on Monday from San Benito County Water District after Commissioner Curro and I had a conversation or meeting with the new general manager of the district on Friday regarding the possibility of special districts joining LAFCO. The new general manager is from Santa Clara Valley Water, so has experience with special districts being on LAFCOs. And he did have quite a few questions for me, but then also said that he didn't think it was going to make it on the agenda this month for the district. So he's requesting that the deadline be pushed back to the end of December so that they have an opportunity in December to have the discussion at the board level.
Does that coincide with our meeting?
I believe theirs is before ours, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, theirs is, I think, either the night before or the week before ours.
All in favor of? Thank you, sorry. Public comment discussion?
No motion. Last month, we met Virginia. Jennifer, you'll recall you introduced us to Virginia. Would that be an appropriate time to invite her to come and speak? Or do you think that with the knowledge that this gentleman has, or woman, I don't know what it is, sorry,
We already offered and they're considering, so it may be that we do. They're considering that for their meeting.
okay.
Thank you.
No other public comment.
Thank you. Any other comment from the commission? Okay, so do we want to extend to our next meeting, the deadline?
I move to extend to the timeline needed to be able to get it on, well, how would that work, Jennifer? Is it that we're extending it through the month of December, or we're extending it to our next meeting in December for them to be able to do it?
Either, up to you. I think either would be fine at this point.
Then my recommendation would be to extend to our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can I have a roll?
I know that was why I asked
A
the
day.
question. Yeah. We can agendize it even if it doesn't have a final decision till the night before.
Yeah. Yep.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Betancourt,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Curl,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I make a recommendation?
Yes.
I recommend that we extend or continue 6.1 and 6.2 to next meeting, if it's okay with the commission that we don't go through any updates. in light of the time restriction that we have right now.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you have any objection to that? Did you have anything pressing?
No, nothing critical.
Thank you. Roll call?
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bencourt,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Curro,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you all.